Fantasy Fuel is powered by Poll Sports. Get instant fantasy football advice through real-time polls by visiting pollsports.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tom Tuttle's Thursday Night Preview. This week we've got the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, everybody knows that John Eddie Jr., my co-host for Fantasy Fuel, who usually sits right across from me when we do Fantasy Fuel, he's an Eagles fan. And he obviously knows probably more about the Eagles than I would because he follows them a lot closer. But it's kind of an interesting one because his favorite team is going up against all of my family's favorite team. And I know a lot of his family are Packer fans as well. So this is a good one. Thursday night preview for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. I guess the main place to start there is just kind of go through quick the players that are going to be relevant on this team going forward. And obviously you have Aaron Rodgers, and on the other side you got Carson Wentz. And when it comes to the running backs, right now there's Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard, Darren Sproles for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then for the Packers, you got Aaron Jones and you got Jamal Williams as well, who both of them could be fantasy relevant for the most part for the rest of the season. We'll find out about that. And then for the wide receivers, you've got, the Eagles, They have right now Nelson Aguilar, and that's about it. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's there, but because the Jeffrey injury and the Deshaun Jackson injury, they're pretty depleted at wide receiver right now. And then the Packers, you've got Valdez-Scantling, and you've got Devontae Adams. Them two are pretty much it. They're not. Aaron Rodgers isn't super targeting anyone else on this team as far as wide receivers go. Them two guys are the guys. And shoot, Valdez-Scantling looked pretty good last week. And I think that's a sign of things that could be coming for the Green Bay Packers. I think Adams still is going to be the number one guy there, and I think he's still going to get more fantasy points. But, man, Scantling looked good. Valdez-Scantling looked really good this last week. And then I want to look at the tight end position. Obviously, you got Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, wow. Amazing, right? He's always going to be good. And it's not going to matter who is on the field. If Jeffrey's out there, if you got Deshaun Jackson and Aguilar out there, Zach Ertz is going to get his. I mean, just for these for the last few games, for the first two games, Zach Ertz had 13 receptions on 126 yards. He didn't get a touchdown, which, you think, whatever, no big deal. Because, boy, oh boy, did they go to Nelson Aguilar. They threw the ball to him a million times, it seems like. And rightly so, they didn't really have any other wide receivers to throw to besides Zach Ertz. So, yeah, them two guys definitely highly targeted these last 2 weeks. And then you got Jimmy Graham, who just is a bunch of nothing right now. He had a good first week, and then after that, he's just gone right back to being nothing because, you know what? The Packers just aren't throwing the ball. They're just not throwing the ball as much, and they're not throwing the ball as well. Aaron Rodgers just seems a little off lately. He doesn't seem like he is the Aaron Rodgers of old. Now, that might have something to do with game plan, but I think it has something to do with he just doesn't feel confident in the guys he's throwing to. He feels confident in Valdez-Scantling. He feels confident in Adams. That's really about it. I think he feels confident in the running backs when he throws it to them, but that's not something that you can build a big success on. You can't just keep dumping it off to the running backs every single week and expect to win. Well, guess what? They're 3-0 and they're winning. Why are they winning? Because their defense is really, really good this year. It really is. And I didn't know what to expect. I knew they tried to improve that defense quite a bit, but their defense is really looking solid, which leads me into the Thursday night preview. do you think the Eagles, with not having wide receivers in Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson, do you think that they can beat the Packers with just Aguilar and Ertz? That's tough because you know what? Carson Wentz has been looking really good. I mean, he's trying to carry this team. He just doesn't have the weapons right now to do that. So yeah, these last 2 weeks haven't been good for the Eagles because they don't have their number one, and you could argue their number two wide receiver. It's hard to win when you don't have them guys on the field. Aguilar has really stepped up, and he's been really good. Now, there have been a little bit of rumors floating out there saying that Jeffrey was held out of last week's game because he was making sure he was ready for this game going against the Packers. If that's the case, then we should expect to see Jeffrey go out there, and he should be somewhat successful. Now, I don't know how much that's going to do any real good fantasy-wise because, like I said, I think this Packers defense is really, really good. Now, the one area I'll say the Packers defense could improve a little bit upon is stopping the run. Last week, they didn't do that much, and their running backs kind of got plenty of yards and touchdowns and whatnot. So you have to look at that, and when you're going to look at the running backs for the Philadelphia Eagles, you got Jordan Howard, you got Miles Sanders, and obviously you got Darren Sproles. He's not going to be running the ball so much. He's going to be catching passes out of the backfield, but Miles Sanders didn't look too bad last week. He had 13 carries for 53 yards for a average of 4.1 yards per carry. Now, you compare that to the first 2 weeks. He's improved quite a bit, at least in this 1 week, because the first 2 weeks he had 2.5 yards per carry, which didn't look good because Jordan Howard was sitting there at 4.4 yards per carry. This last week, Jordan Howard only had 3.4 yards per carry, but he did have that touchdown, so that made him a more fantasy-relevant running back than Miles Sanders. But I'm telling you what, Miles Sanders is going to probably be the guy going forward, and I imagine his role gets bigger and bigger as the year goes on. I expect Miles Sanders to have a decent fantasy day, and I think Jordan Howard could have an okay day as well because the Packers' defense is so good against the pass that I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to do that. So the Eagles are probably going to try and run the ball a little more. That's my opinion of how I'm seeing these stats and how it lays out. Now, I think Zach Ertz is going to have a fine day. I think Aguilar could have a fine day. I think Jeffrey, if playing, could have a fine day. I'm just not expecting any of one of them to go off. I think this all going to be, okay, I started him and I got what I got, and that's what it is. I like it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. That's what you're going to get out of them three guys if Jeffrey plays. If Jeffrey doesn't play, I think Nelson Aguilar has another really good week, and I think Zach Ertz will have a fine week. But I honestly expect Miles Sanders to have a really good game against this Packers defense because not only do the Packers defense struggle a little bit against the run, but they also but Miles Sanders has really been improving. So I think they're going to try their best to get Miles Sanders going because the Packers passing defense looks like it's really good this year. Now, as far as the Packers offensive side, boy, Aaron Rodgers, like I said, just doesn't look like himself. So it's starting to cause a little bit of concern. I don't know if you have another option at quarterback on your fantasy team, you might be considering it at this time because Aaron Rodgers, he's doing fine. He's getting decent fantasy points, but it's not like you're used to. You want a little more out of Aaron Rodgers. Now, let's put it this way. If I had Aaron Rodgers and Carson Wentz, boy, this is a tough week to make that decision because the Packers' passing defense I really like. So I think Carson Wentz may have a little bit of a time. But the Packers' passing offense just doesn't seem like it's there. But the Eagles' passing defense isn't perfect. So I think I'd probably stay safe, and I'd go with Aaron Rodgers. But, boy, it's really a toss-up. I don't have any problems if you want to say, screw it, I'm going with Carson Wentz this week because I just think that he can have a better week. But that, again, you got to be aware of the Packers' passing defense. Now, on the other side of the Packers, again, we're talking about the offense. Aaron Jones did not look very good last week. Now, he did get 2 touchdowns. So if you're playing him in fantasy football, that's really good. He saved his week because of them 2 touchdowns. But the other guy that looked good running the ball was Williams. He didn't look bad at all. If I'm remembering right, I think he had like 4 or 5 yards per carry. And that's a really good sign that maybe you want to consider picking him up if he's still available, or playing him if you're in a crunch. Because what I believe LaFleur said this last week was they're going to split the carries as even as possible. So if that's the case, you really have to pay close attention to that. I guess really that's about it. I think Adams is going to have a fine day, and I think Aaron Rodgers should have a fine day, and I think Scantling should have a fine day. I think if the Eagles are going to win this game, I don't think they can win this game if Jeffrey doesn't play. If Jeffrey doesn't play, they will not win. Mark my words on that. I'm going to make that prediction. I know John Eddie Jr. is not going to like that prediction, but I don't think they can win if Jeffrey. They need another wide receiver they can at least try to throw the ball to, because everybody else just isn't working. You can't just keep relying on one guy in Nelson Aguilar, and obviously you got the tight end in Zach Ertz. But, wow, you got to have somebody else to throw to, because Carson Wentz is trying his best, and it's just not enough. They're losing games without their wide receivers, and they need them. So I think that's about it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Remember, I want you to go to pollsports.com. You can go there and ask your questions. Hey, who should I start? This guy or this guy? Should I start? Go on there if you got these 2 players. Should I start Carson Wentz or Aaron Rodgers? Or just go on there and do it right now just to see who you think is going to get voted more. Will it be Aaron Rodgers or will it be Carson Wentz? Go on there, pollsports.com. Get your fantasy questions answered. Remember, that's pollsports.com. All right, guys, you can find us just about anywhere. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate a review. It really does help us out. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio. We are everywhere, like I said. Thank you for listening, and remember, guys, to stay fueled up this fantasy season.